Hello, this is Adam at Now Gaming.
This is Paul.
And we're about to talk about Valiant Hearts Great War, which is Ubisoft's latest UbiArt framework engine game, which people will recognise from Rayman Origins and Legends, and most recently Child of Light. Now, you reviewed this for us, Paul, so you're probably going to be the best one to talk about this, I guess. So summarise Valiant Hearts for us.
So it's a game set during World War One. It's primarily a narrative game with puzzle mechanics in between. So it's telling a story of multiple characters from multiple nationalities on different sides of the war.
So both Allied and Axis.
Yeah. There's a German character in there, and there's a French character, Belgium, etc., etc. So it's basically a very story-based game with puzzle mechanics in between.
Okay. So generally, what do you think of the game? Is it good? Is it fun to play?
I think it's generally a pretty good game. I enjoyed it. There are some problems with it. I mean, the narrative is good in some aspects, and it can actually be quite affecting and poignant at times. Even though it's in a cartoon style, it's not that they're necessarily not taking their subject matter seriously. I think it's probably at its best when it does do that. The biggest problem is it includes a cartoon sort of stereotype barren antagonist, which kind of undercuts a lot of the good stuff that it does, because it's kind of this thing of the tragedy of the people in the war, but then the fact that you're chasing a cartoon bad guy, it almost seems like there is an enemy, and it kind of underlies that point it's making about the sort of pointlessness of war and the tragedy of the First World War. It doesn't really help it in that way.
Because the point is that they're not. Neither side is evil.
Well, yeah, that's what they've sort of talked about before. That they weren't trying to sort of make a bad guy. They were just trying to show what that conflict was like, and show some of the there's some good moments. That it tells you some things, or makes you aware of some things that you might not be aware of that happened in the First World War, and some of the people that were involved in it that aren't normally talked about. So the soldiers from various sort of British colonies that were involved in the war. It reminds you there's sections where you can't go. There's an officer sort of forcing you to go on, and if you turn around, he will shoot you. So there's kind of some of the darker elements in there. But as I say, when there is actually a bad guy, it kind of doesn't really work. It kind of undercuts all that stuff, which is a shame.
So generally, as a game, how would you say it is? Is it a puzzle game? Is it?
Yeah, most of your time is spent solving puzzles. There are sort of more action-based scenes interspersed. The puzzles aren't really particularly complex. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because it kind of keeps the momentum up. And with it being quite focused on narrative, I think it's important that it doesn't lose its pace. So having the puzzles being fairly simple does help with that.
How does that work then? Because obviously the First World War isn't well known for its complex puzzles.
Well, I suppose you could say it doesn't really gel with the narrative, and in that respect, it's mainly sort of picking up items, classic point and click adventure game stuff. Right. You can throw objects as well, so there's a bit of you have to throw a grenade in a certain place, or throw something to knock a ladder down. It's fairly simple stuff. There are one or two sort of more complex things. You've got a dog with you most of the time, so you can tell the dog to do certain things. So There are times where you have to do one thing and have your dog doing another thing. So it can get a little bit more intriguing. But I'd say it's fairly unremarkable as a puzzle game. Not particularly original, but not bad. The action scenes are a lot weaker. They're a bit clunky to control. They just don't feel quite right. I mean, some of those sections sort of style makes up for the lack of substance.
So the art style of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be pretty much guaranteed now that if it's made in the UbiArt framework, it looks amazing. So, and that's the case here. So when the art style and the music sort of comes together, and maybe just a narrative moment, that sometimes sort of compensates for the clunkiness of the action sequences and lets them get away with it to an extent. So I wouldn't say it's bad as a game ever, but it's relatively unimaginative, not particularly exceptional in that regard. But I don't think that harms it too much.
So out of Rayman Origins and Legends, Child of Light and this, you'd probably say this is probably the weaker one of the three?
Yes, but I would say it's a very different game, and that sort of makes it worthwhile in its own way. It's quite interesting in the serious that it gives to its subject, apart from the cartoon antagonist. And you know, you can clearly see that they've taken their subject seriously, and there's a lot of stuff in there about the war and so on that you can read up on if you're so inclined. So I think that makes it an intriguing game in and of itself.
So on the narrative terms, it's probably more likely to appeal to people than just the core gameplay.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's something there for people who like puzzle games. It's not a bad puzzle game as such, but I think it's really the sort of narrative strength that's going to bring people there. And as I say, the art style as well, it really does look incredible. So yeah, it's a good game. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so that's Valiant Hearts: The Great War on PSN, Xbox, and PC for $11.99.